Meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I open the floor for public comment, I do want to recognize Trustee Jean Dewey. This is Jean's last board meeting with us. She's served wonderfully for 4 years, of course, as chair of parks. I've told her she's not off the hook. She is, you're in that position till 6:30 on April 4th when Sydney gets sworn in. So we won't let you off the hook, and we're glad that you'll be able to come on the 4th and witness the swearing in, because we'll have more to say and share about you. But Jean, I do want to take this moment to thank you.
I'll miss you guys.
We'll be there every Monday.
Yes, yeah. You can tune in, watch us from the comfort of your home with a glass of wine. Yeah. All right, I will now open the floor for public comment.
Hello, you have it? Okay. You want me to stand up?
Yeah, if you would, well, if you would just
I have
say your name and where you live, etc.
My name's Jane. This is my husband Philip, and my kid. We're kind of a dyad. And I have some papers. My name's Jane Keep, and I have had a carriage company in Tucson, Arizona for about 10 years. And we moved here in 2020 and kind of ready to get back to work. I think that Cooperstown would be a really great town for it. I have a proposal for a proposal, and I basically want to make it possible for people to talk to me and don't want to submit something that is disagreeable in any way. So I would love to work with the town as much as possible and make it something that would really bring, happiness and a little sparkle to town. So I looked for a walking tour of history, and it can be difficult to find. So, and I live here. So if maybe visitors are coming and they're interested in history, it can be difficult to do it self-guided. And so it's nice for people to be able to put their feet up and ride around. And so hopefully you'll be interested. And if you have any questions, or you want me to walk the town with you, or we can talk about parking, all that is totally something I would love to talk about.
So we all got that in our packet.
Oh, you already printed it out too?
But we have the material.
Okay.
We have a wonderful.
I'll take it.
I got colored prints, so.
Yeah, the color might be easier, because I was a little confused by your map, so.
Oh, yeah, so there's a colored print now, right, and it's colored coded.
Oh, nice, nice stiff paper.
Yeah, well,
Thank you.
it's important to me, so.
Did you get one?
And I have a couple extras too, because I know a couple people. Okay. Yeah. I know the first question is always what happens with the manure? And we have a manure catch bag that is always attached to the carriage, and so it's always an afterthought for me because it's just taken care of before it ever falls, so.
So do you want to introduce your program, if we just have a second to describe what you have in mind?
Yeah, so I have a single horse-drawn carriage. It seats 6 passengers. We would have people either walk up and do walk-up tours, or we can do reservations and have a schedule. We've done in the past weddings, proposals, funerals, all types of special events, parades, and the guided history tour. So in the back of the pamphlet, there's a map, which there would be a short tour, which would basically be from a spot that was proposed by Cindy, which is the driver's test parking area in front of the district attorney's office. Not to put Cindy on the spot, it was just a possibility, and this is all a starting point, like up for negotiation. But people could get on. We would avoid the streets that Cindy pointed out as problematic, which would be the main business district because of traffic, to be as courteous as possible to your residents and also to the traffic that comes in. And then also to highlight some of the off the beaten track spots that are historic or points of interest or things that don't necessarily get seen and talked about as much when visitors come. Then there's also, so there's a longer tour that goes around, which is highlighted in blue on the map, and then there's a very short tour if people just want to do a quick, kind of put their feet up, take a breather. Yeah.
So you would be like parking your trailer and leaving the carriage at 217 Main, is that the concept?
So if they would allow us to rent a spot there, yeah, we would take the trailer home with the horses and the carriage would be there stored undercover. So I don't know if you're familiar with the lot, but there's a lot that's behind the depot building. And it has like a boat in it with little trees growing out of it. And it seems like it's nothing interesting to anyone. So we're waiting to hear back from him to see if he would rent us that gated lot. Which in the past, that's what we did in Tucson, and it worked really well. Secure, out of the way. We operate by the standards of carriage operators in North America, which is the president owns the largest carriage company in North America as well, who I work for. So the standards for safety, humaneness, clean streets, as well as just professionalism as far as you know, what you wear, how you speak to people, you're not hawking rides, all of those things are really carefully handled. So you guys probably have been to all different kinds of cities that have carriages, and you can tell the difference between a super professional and tight operation versus maybe people aren't as experienced or don't care as much. So I'd like to offer that we're on the far spectrum of we really care. We brought our horses from Tucson. We love them. We know them really well. They're very good with people and they're kind of ambassadors. A lot of people don't get to see working horses anymore. So that's what we do. And we'll submit a request after we can make whatever accommodations the town needs. We'll actually submit a real permit request at the next meeting.
All right.
Yeah.
Are there any questions for Jane while she's still here?
No, I'm good. You gonna wear the top hat?
You know, I actually live in a top hat. It's I can fit under my pillow. No, it is weird. Once you get attached to the top hat, you wear it. Yes.
Well, if no other questions, thank you for coming. I think this has really fleshed this out very well. We appreciate this and your professionalism on board. So we will look for the permit application.
Awesome. Thank you guys. And feel free to contact me for anything you need and I'll get the additionally insured and all that for the city.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. Yes.
Vincent Russo, 74 Main Street. What I wanted to talk about is a piece of the vending law that actually dates back to the mid 1990s when Wendell Tripp was mayor at the time. He put together an ad hoc committee to develop the vending law, and one of the pieces of it was to deal with products that would be displayed outdoors in on private property. And at the time, we recognized that obviously there were certain kinds of items that were routinely and historically sold and displayed outdoors, like a gas station might have a collection of tires outdoors, or a vehicle to I shouldn't say a vehicle, a display to hold, say, oil. Stationery stores might sell newspapers. Florists would sell flowers outdoors on display. But the intent was, we never recognized, and we always assumed that any of these displays would be freestanding on private property. And that at no point would someone decide that they were going to use the building, hang something from the building that they determined was, well, the building was on private property. The item itself would be, let's say, over the air rights of public, and use this as a vehicle to really just not really sell anything per se, but to advertise, much like a sign would be. And that was never our intent. We never really never envisioned that that's the way this law would be used. So I really believe, when really one thinks about it, I mean, one could, you know, if I wanted to, I know I'm a Republican, you know that, and you guys are all Democrats. If I wanted to, I could go and hang 10 hooks on my building and sign, you know, put up, but let's go Brandon t-shirts on the entire front right now within the confines of the law. I don't have any intent to do that, but I just give you some example. And we have had situations where people have actually put up signs early on. We haven't had it, I haven't seen it recently, but early on, I remember a merchant put up a sign and said, oh, no, it's not a sign, it's for sale. And it's covered right now. The provision in the law does not prohibit you from doing that in theory. So a lot of people have mentioned this to me. There are a couple of businesses that are have gotten a little carried away with it. And a lot of the other businesses don't particularly like that. They think it looks a little schlocky. And I really think that I guess it's the planning board or whoever should develop this really needs to re-examine that piece of the law and really restrict it to only freestanding displays. So if you wanted to put something on a table, you could do it on private property. If you wanted to put something on a mannequin on private property, you could do that. You could still do those things, but you can't hang something from a building and say, even though it's blowing in the wind over public property and saying, hey, no, that's private property. So, and a lot of us don't like it. So that's what I'm here to just tell you about. That I really think you should give some consideration to tweaking the rules. By the way, it also requires a permit, which I don't think people are getting. And there was an annual fee to be collected for the same thing. So I just think you need to really revisit this, because I think it's a little schlocky. Thanks.
Thank you, Vinny.
You're welcome.
Could you, we can always have our CEO, who isn't here this evening, you know, look at this and hear
Right.
your comments. I
Sure.
think that might be the best thing, unless you wanted to put anything down like that you're specifically looking.
I mean, we decided sort of a year ago that we really need to redo the entire vending law. You remember we have 2 vending laws that are sort of
Duplicate.
simultaneously competing. And I think that what Vinny brings up is part of one of those.
That's correct.
The
That-
outdoor display of merchandise
Right.
on private property. I mean, I think, and you know, I will say the past 2 seasons have been so unusual that it just hasn't risen to the top of the priority list, but we probably need to look at the whole thing. And it probably does need to involve board discussion at some point about what we want the vending law to look like.
But I'll be happy to meet with anybody anytime. So.
And do you have a more definitive, or would you?
Well, I think if you limited it to a freestanding structure, I mean, if somebody wants, you know, a hardware store wants to display a rake and it's the rake is leaning up against the building and the entire rake is on private property, then we'd probably deem that acceptable. You know, if somebody wants to put something in newspapers on a newspaper rack, all on private property, that would be acceptable. But when one begins to, you know, put a nail in your building and hang something off your building, I mean, we wouldn't allow someone to go in and modify the look of the exterior of a building without going before the planning board, but yet we'll allow people to do that and throw a t-shirt up on it or anything and just say, well, it's for sale.
And what about this, just a quick question.
Sure.
A situation where there's a 6-inch margin of private property and you're hanging, I'm trying to understand.
Well, I don't know that there are many situations that way. I mean, there could be, but it's by just simply making it an issue of free standing structure. If somebody wants to buy a pole to put something on that pole, the question becomes, when does a sign end and a product for sale begin? When you really think about it. I mean, if I put up, you know, my comment about that, someone might consider somebody putting up a sign that says, let's go Brandon, as an offensive sign in some circles. And But you could put up the same, a T-shirt that would say the same exact thing. And that would, you'd say, well, that's an item that's available for sale. So I think if you did say, it's got to be from a freestanding structure, and I don't know that there are, I know that there's a lot of people who like to say, well, it's 3 inches, 4 inches. If it's attached to the building, it shouldn't be attached to the building. Because then you're talking about modifying the building.
I think that's like catch.
I think that's the difference. I mean, once you begin, then it becomes no different than a sign.
Okay, I think that the thing to do is, we will refer this to our CEO initially, and I understand that we've got some elements that probably general code needs to help with as far as what is there or not. But I think I'd like to start with Jim Berman and the plan.
Yeah, but I'm available anytime if they want to come.
Thank
Thank you.
Very much. I don't think there's any other public comment. We did receive correspondence. We have an email from Jessica Brighton regarding parking on Fish Road. This comes up, I guess we can make sure that Sydney sees that and she comes in. I will say, my only comment on that is we have less than 40 spaces on Fish Road and 80 boat slips. And for people to think that they will always have a parking spot is not kind of what's gonna happen.
So I find this a very reasonable request.
Okay.
I agree, but I also think it's not possible, really. I mean, if you are putting a boat in with a trailer, and then you have to pull your trailer out and
Drive to
travel
Ferry Spring to leave it.
somewhere else, and then unhook the trailer, drive back, and you're leaving your boat someplace in the water. And that takes what, then probably an hour. I just think, I agree, it's a problem that trailers are taking up a lot of space, but I don't know that there's an easy fix.
You might want to, as you say, you're going to be bringing her up to speed. I would also ask that you check back, because actually we did try to pass this law. I think it was before everyone on this board but Cindy and me. And it was volatile. Let me just say, we had DEC, we had New York State people, we had a lot. It's bigger than just our little Fish Road. So I think anyone who brings that forward should have that background material in hand, so they aren't running into a firing squad. So
And
I
that's
will
what
say.
you told me last time it came up, and so I just.
Yeah.
No, but reading the minutes, I think would be helpful from that last public hearing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That was the result of attempting to ban trailers.
yeah.
correct. Right. Okay, good. Thank you, James.
Somebody did bring up the interesting idea that if the trolley, if people could take the trolley back,
Mhm.
leave their car attached to their trailer at a lot,
Yeah,
and take the trolley back, that might be.
They absolutely could.
yeah, you
Yeah.
absolutely could, yeah. It just, we
I guess
might wait a little longer for a trial.
I guess when that came up was 2 years ago when we didn't have a trolley.
Moving on, in a few minutes, we'll open the public hearing on proposed local law number 2. Moving on, we have permit application, Cooperstown Distillery Beverage Exchange application for an outdoor eating area. Have we already made a decision on whether we're again going to be waiving our fees? I noticed this still says the Board of Trustees have waived this fee for the 2019 season.
And they ended up paying, so what we can obviously reimburse.
Yeah. That might be the first kind of order of business.
I Rich had said sort of offhand that I think we can expect COVID numbers to be on the rise again. I agree with that estimation, and I think providing the
means for people to enjoy time outdoors this summer will be important. And with all of that in mind, I would make a motion to waive the annual license fee for outdoor dining areas.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Richard. So you're talking just food, because when we sort of had our, what shall I call it?
Sidewalk sales, our summer sidewalk.
Yeah, well, yeah, we had different event names, Cooperstown Outdoors, and then we realized we should maybe name it something else, so we had a couple different names. So the belief is we would not be doing anything but food, correct? So you are just allowing no fee for food.
Yeah, I actually took, on Wednesday, the Economic Development Committee meets, and I was going to discuss with them whether they thought there was whether it would be useful to look at things other than food.
Well, based on your premise, the idea of people not having to crowd into stores,
Is it applicable whether it's food or not?
correct. So if, I wouldn't, I don't see the rationale for limiting this waiver to food. Sure.
So the motion was for food, the moment, and seconded.
I mean, I think we have to do them separately because they are two distinct things.
Yeah, two different applications.
Yeah, I'm happy to make the next, the next motion, or even the next
No,
motion.
no, no.
So
Is
the
there-
motion,
I
okay.
just one last, but is there any other category, like the smoke shop? What will that be? It's not dining and it's not merchant.
It's retail.
That'd be retail, okay. So those are the two categories, dining and retail.
We've seen it. All right, so motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Sorry, I'll just, one thing, sorry, Cindy, of course I can participate in this particular item, but just generally, the philosophy behind waiving the fee is just to do a favor to our friends on Main Street, is that
To
the?
encourage this behavior, especially this year.
Even before COVID, it was to really enliven Main Street and
Street,
provide opportunities for people to enjoy all that we have to offer.
Okay.
Yeah,
wonderful.
you know, during the summer, I mean, we think about that with Music on Main, et cetera. So motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor of waiving the fee for outdoor eating areas associated with business, raise your hand. Okay. No nays. All right, so now let's go on.
So I dropped a stitch here. Did we actually approve this application?
No, we're back.
No, so
I-
all we
I
did
move-
was the fees.
Okay, gotcha.
I move we approve the application of Cooperstown Distillery Beverage Exchange.
I second.
I have a point of clarification because I can't read the liquor authority license that's included with the application. And I think if you would entertain a friendly amendment that the serving of alcohol should be contingent upon the proper licensing from the state of New York.
I'll accept that. It goes without saying, in any event. I'll accept it as a friendly amendment.
Well, doesn't it have to be a particular type of license where it does, so we can't tell what type of license this is. There's a license for alcohol
Right.
service inside a building and not, so.
Yeah, because this is actually a property that's not owned by this business. Now, granted, the building isn't owned by the business either, they're a leasee. So I just think it's really important that there's follow-up with the liquor authority to make sure that if these tables are used for the service of alcohol, that is permissible.
That is their independent responsibility to obtain that permission is what you're saying. We're not granting that permission.
They need to provide proof that they can do that. We have another business in town that is not allowed to serve alcohol on the tables they place on Main Street because they do not have that license.
And it's not their property, right? I mean, it's
our
property.
In both
Because,
cases.
for instance, like at Mel's, they own
They own that
so they-
property in front.
So it's a moot point. for
That's
them.
exactly
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
All right, so your friendly amendment,
Accepted it.
accepted, okay, so motion has been made and seconded to approve this application contingent on clarification of the liquor license, correct? All those in favor of approving this application, say aye. All those opposed and those abstained.
Abstained.
You're no Justice Thomas.
Recuse, not accused.
Yeah. So, yeah, you got
Berta
it.
Plunkett, this is the Bennington Morris mandate. They've been here for years, and of course not the past several years during the pandemic. And they have submitted an application to use the Village Park, Pioneer Park, on April 23rd for performance by the Morris dancers. It's specifically from 3 to 3:30 p.m. And they have requested that the $65 non-resident fee be waived, which seems fine. So is there a motion? Moved by Jean to approve the permit and waive the fee, $65. And second, that was you, Richard, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No, I'm an aye.
We now have, oh, I have one question. I noticed Tara in one of her emails to you and always reported that she mentioned that they're looking at a June 4th yard sale.
They are.
Yard sale, and she was hoping that we would allow the chamber's sidewalk vending. So if we make a decision with June, at our April meeting, April, whatever it is, 25th meeting, that's probably, is that soon enough for them? Did you
I
have a
thought, I
sense?
had sort of noted that when we set the vending dates, could we set the sidewalk sale dates for that time period then? Or we could just do all of it. I mean, I think we will probably allow sidewalk vending all summer.
Okay, well, it sounded like you wanted to discuss it with economic development first.
Yeah, but the dates didn't work the way they were
Should have.
supposed to.
Okay, all right, so just remember to bring it up when we're
Yeah.
looking at all the others, perfect. Review of minutes of the February 28th meeting and the March 14th. I know I put in a couple little corrections, others might have as well. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from February 28th and March 14th with corrections submitted
So moved.
by Mac, second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
You have your zoning officials report in your packet, and we were emailed minutes from the planning board, ZBA and HPARB. You got those via email. Are there any questions or comments for us? Is there a motion to accept the report?
So moved.
By Max, second by Jean, all in favor? And I find my piece of paper. We unfortunately had a couple retirements from the HPARB board, and I will move that I appoint, I should say, I'm going to appoint, and I'd like a motion to ratify this, David Strogatz to the January 1st, 2023 term ending on HPARB. And at this time, Pat Yinke and Jesse Ravage, who are both sworn in alternates, will be moving up to fill the other 2 vacancies on HPARB. So it's a David Strogatz appointment.
So moved.
Move,
Yes.
and second by Richard.
I did have a question. Who else is gonna be on HPAR?
The ones who are currently on
Yeah.
there are Liz Callahan, Chair, and David Sanford. So it was moved and seconded. All in favor of ratifying my appointment?
Aye.
Thank you. And, there'll be a new kind of appointment sheet, committee sheet on April 4th at our organizational meeting. But I'll point out, I've mentioned it before, we are missing a second alternate on HPAR, Planning Board, and ZBA. And, ultimately, it's just a great place for people to get their feet wet, watch how the boards operate, and then move up. So if anyone has any suggestions, and usually what we like to do is have them attend some of the meetings. Lately, they've been virtually, and they attend virtually, but they kind of get the feel of what they're doing. So,
HBAR zoning and planning.
all of them, ZBA, planning, and HPAR. There's a first alternate for all of them, but it's always good to have that second alternate. Right, well, it's now 7 o'clock. So I'm going to open the public hearing for proposed local law number 2 of 2022, which will extend the suspension of 2-hour parking limit on Main Street from Fair to Pine Boulevard and Pioneer Street, east side of Beaver Street to Lake Street, west side Lake Street to Church Street, from Thanksgiving to April 1. Currently, it's Thanksgiving to the 3rd Monday in January, so it's extending it to April 1. We didn't receive any correspondence on that.
No.
Is Beaver Street a typo? I don't think that's.
Oh, maybe that's, I thought that's what I had sent you that this was the previous one that.
I assumed you submitted it to her.
The east
I
side of
checked
Beaver
it,
Street
but
to
I
Lake, it
thought
should be,
it's Church.
Oh, so you want me just to remove Beaver Street?
Yeah, I mean, that would be getting mighty close to Bassett. I think that
I
would
was trying to picture that.
cause some.
again, Beaver Street doesn't,
Yes, it does.
Beaver Street
Yes,
It does,
Dead
but
end.
way.
I think it's Church.
All right, so
And if
you,
I missed it, I apologize.
so is that first sentence, what is that just erase east side Beaver Street to Lake Street removed?
It's
Well-
pioneered.
Or is it east side Church Street to Lake Street?
It's both sides, Church Street.
Okay, so it doesn't need to be separated like that.
So just Lake Street to Church Street?
Yeah,
Okay,
and if I missed it, Jenna, I apologize.
No, I just took it from the other one, so.
we'll leave that open for just a few more minutes and then we'll close it. We'll vote on that. Doesn't seem like it's a,
It's interesting because last time we did consider this, the room was swarmed with people who were very much opposed to this. But no one's here this evening, and I know that it was pretty broadly.
circulated.
So
What was the issue last time?
I think there was a lot of concern about employees, not necessarily of Main Street businesses, but of other businesses turning
Parking lot.
Main Street into a parking lot.
All right, moving on, public safety, police and fire.
So we have the minutes here. We can talk later about the dock thing with the sheriff's vote, or.
I just had a thought. I take it from this that it's still under review. There was no recommendation made. There's no favorable recommendation.
Correct.
You know what, it was, why don't you reference how it was discussed here at police, but it was referred to you because you're also parks,
Right.
and I know they commented on it, so also.
So the thought from the police department, and I kind of concurred at the time, was that the presence of a sheriff's vote at Lakefront might be helpful, because it's been total chaos the last couple of summers, and people being a little rogue. However, the actual number of times, well, I guess I'll get to that in the parks. The thought was also it would be very accessible, so that if it was needed, and if EMS fire needed it, it's right there. It'd be easy to take it out. The sheriff's department does not feel comfortable having it on just a day slip because it's gonna get banged up.
It's better.
Yeah. And it's a really expensive boat, so, and I don't feel like it should go in an interior slip, because if you have to go out in a hurry, it's not gonna be possible. So exterior slip was the possibility, but we asked Frank to come up with numbers of how many times it's been actually utilized in the last 5 years, so I'll get to that at Parks.
Alright. Stay tuned.
He was hanging.
And any other questions on the police committee?
No. Motion to accept the police committee report. So moved by Cindy, second by Jean, all in favor.
And then the fire committee meeting. Actually, the vote came up here too, because they, fire and EMS are trained in water rescue. And they brought up the concern that the police aren't trained in water rescue. And so that was a concern.
I think there might have been a misunderstanding with further communication in my household.
Oh, yeah.
That there was at least the impression that the police were taking on this responsibility. And I said, I think it's my understanding that they were facilitating water rescue by the fire department or by.
Right, yeah,
That they weren't suggesting they were going to do it, but.
right, that they would take
There
them
might
out.
have been some territory.
But it did come up that the few water rescues there have been in the middle of the night.
And I don't think that's true either, because I
Really?
know my personal boat has gone out
Yeah.
during daylight hours for water rescue.
So maybe it's not all of them, but some of them.
The numbers say I
It
don't
sounds
know.
like, I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of anecdotal information, and I
Yes.
still believe, and I'll say it now, from the police, the parks,
Yes.
that this is a solution in search of a problem.
Yeah.
I really think
Yeah.
we're overreacting.
Yeah.
I don't want to saddle our police force with all that extra responsibility, and and just the logistics of it make it impractical, and for a purpose that really doesn't exist, it isn't otherwise accounted for.
I personally came to the same conclusion. I think that the amount of smoke that we were generating wasn't worth it. They have, the system works for them. Sam Smith's is a professional boat marina. They do get the boat in very quickly. By the time that the sheriff's cars arrive, they're in the water. There's also an advantage, not so much to Cooperstown, but to the entire lake of having it slightly more centrally located on the lake. I think there's no reason for us to continue on down this road.
Rich, I agree, and also it's still unclear to me whether there is any increase in our liability to, to the village, for an array of things, an incident involving, an injury of an officer or an increase in insurance costs. I mean, I don't have any of those answers, so I couldn't support it comfortably.
It was worth considering, and we've considered it, and we certainly considered it and discussed it and reviewed it. And like I said, I would be against it right now.
Right, it is to Gene's point about things being, I think use the expression rogue. If our patrols routinely had a pass along the docks, it's the police presence, it won't be the boat presence, it's the presence of a police officer, and I don't know when he's gonna show up.
I felt like there was quite a bit of police presence last.
There really was,
Oh, good.
because we were checking them out a lot, yes.
Good.
And state police as well.
Yeah.
Great.
The other thing I wanted to note is that Jim Tallman wanted to relay that everybody in the village, Mitch, Chris, Jenna, everybody in the office has been really fantastic. for everything.
Was he going somewhere?
Which, no, but he's just saying, you know.
The milk of human kindness.
Usually it's something you say when you're retiring or something.
No, I don't think he's going anywhere.
Or you win the Academy Award.
But I guess the elections are coming up, so I guess we'll.
Gene, can I ask you,
Yes.
have you gotten to the EMS report?
Actually, do you have questions there?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's just the problem as stated, seems to, it seems that there's a lot of duplication of services and unnecessary expense because of the way these calls are being coordinated. If I understood what they were saying in this part of the report, and that seems like something that is worthy of attention. I don't know what the solution is, but you know, if everybody's charging out to the same, we don't, it seems like it's a cool head loop. We got a communications problem here.
It's tricky because the county, they're in their vehicles hanging out. So if there's a call, they're physically in an ambulance.
Right, and there's also, and you may remember this, last September, October meeting, I reported on a meeting with various departments that was held at the county with the Director of Emergency Services because of this concept of simultaneous dispatch, and it was burning out the volunteers.
Right.
So they ceased to do that for, in other words, they wouldn't page Cooperstown and Black Creek at the same time. They would give, if it was more Cooperstown's jurisdiction, they'd give Cooperstown the chance to respond first. If they toned in, then Black Creek wouldn't be toned. Now with the county ambulances, those two, they are simultaneously dispatched.
So is it the same problem calling to the same?
It is, but these aren't volunteers being burned out. The problem was you could get two squads up in the vehicle, and the first one to touch the button to say, we're all here, went, and you could have gotten 4 volunteers out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, ready to go in that vehicle, and they aren't going. And so it's a burnout. They were responding to sometimes 45% of the calls. They got there and then weren't.
Yeah. So is there a solution for that being proposed or?
So, and what's happening is apparently the county sticks around from 5 AM to 5 PM. Partially because it is hard for our volunteers because they're at work. And so, so I don't know if the answer is to just tell our volunteers that, I mean, I don't know what the answer is. And sometimes the county's not available and so our volunteers do go. But
Yeah. I think, it's very new. I mean, how long have those ambulances been on the road? I would say about a month and a half at most, barely that.
they were definitely there on my last meeting.
Well, if they could have a protocol whereby the county people get the call. And if they're affirmatively saying we can't do it, would the call then roll to our people? Does that make sense? Something like that makes sense?
It may be another discussion with Victor Jones and. Other than that, were there any questions on that? Fire and EMS, if not, the motion to accept that report. Moved by Cindy, second by Mac, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, let's go back to the proposed local law. I'm going to close the public hearing. We have corrected the wording, so it's essentially from Pioneer Street from Lake Street to Church Street. And we're extending it to April 1st as opposed to the 3rd Monday in January. And is there a motion?
So
Moved by Richard, second by Cindy, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, other committees, streets.
You have the streets minutes in front of you. We have 2 action items. One is that you have the trolley contract in your packet. This is a contract between the village and the county.
And so I think that this reflects the discussion that we had going back to that first week in February. The key parts that relate to our discussion are at the bottom of the first page, so the page that says services rendered across the top. Scope of services, so this says the 2022 trolley season will begin Memorial Day weekend and end Labor Day weekend, 7 days a week during June, July, and August, with one trolley vehicle operating on route. The hours of operation will be 8:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. So that's a little more expansive than last summer, but still has the shortened hours at the end of the day. There was the sense that this contract should say in the next sentence that if numbers are to grow exponentially, that there needs to be the flexibility of putting the second trolley on the street. I think that that is unlikely, but you know, it's hard to predict what this.
I'm fine with that, but take out the word exponential.
Well, it says the village and the county may evaluate the system's performance and increase availability and or frequency of the trolley system and the numbers of trolleys utilized based on ridership demand.
That's fine.
Is that not then the answer? I did notice the discrepancy, and of course, the contract of government in the minutes, there wasn't, in the first bullet on the trolley, there wasn't a start time.
And
But
it's,
the contract has it, and then it was an earlier shutdown date of 7 o'clock in the minutes.
yeah, I think we actually did say we were gonna end at 7:30.
Yeah.
At our meeting, I think the contract is correct, and I misspoke at the meeting.
So this was obviously government contract.
Right. So I'd like to make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the contract with Otsego County for trolley services for 2022.
Motion made by
Second.
Cindy, second by Matt, all in favor?
Aye.
The other action item concerns pay by phone. So there's been a lot of back and forth on this. We now have two different proposals, both different from the proposals that you saw last time, and both better than the proposals that you saw last time. One is from ATI. ATI, since our last meeting, has agreed to drop all of their setup fees. Their proposal is still for a 35-cent transaction fee, which is on the back of the page that says ATI at the top. And we would continue to process all of the credit cards. And basically in this proposal, we collect all the money and then we pay ATI this 35-cent transaction fee. The other proposal is from Passport. Passport has, amazingly enough, offered us a better package than they did last time as well. They're calling it a bundled package, where all of their fees total 50 cents, which is passed on to the consumer. That includes the transaction fee. In this proposal, they process the credit cards and they collect the money, and then they send us our revenue minus their 50-cent fee. They have also waived all of their implementation fees. It would appear to me that Passport offers the better financial model, both for the village, but also for parkers, because it's gonna be less per transaction at 50 cents than it would at 35 cents plus 25 cents.
Yeah, so it's 250
which is-
instead of 260 or 260.
Yeah, which is what we would have had to charge. And I mean, honestly, this is less work for our office staff, which Joe had pointed out last time. I did speak to Huntington, Long Island, today, to find out, to make sure that they didn't see any, they use Passport, to make sure they weren't having any problems with the system, and they had nothing but good things to say. They said there's two things that are working well about their parking system, and Passport is one of them. They did make it clear that we need to engage in some advertising that we're doing this. The first summer that they did it, they didn't really tell many people that they were doing it. And they got 20% use in their lot and almost nothing on the streets. 2 years later, as more and more people have found out, they say that about 25% of their revenue comes through the app. It's about 40% in their lots and 20 to 25%.
So did they implement the signage, small signs and all?
They did, and he gave me some, he said they were too far apart the first time. He said you need to sign every 20 to 25 spaces if you want people to see them. So that was good information to have, but he said you really do need to be on top of making sure, for instance, in our case, that the Hall of Fame and destination marketing and the like have the information so that people, even before they come, could download the app and, you know, include this in their trip planning. So it was a good conversation. He also noted, and this is sort of interesting, Passport has a merchant validation feature. So if merchants wanted to pay for parking, either for their employees or for their customers, they can work with Passport to set that up. So they would have their own account and they can enter all of that stuff through the app. And they could take care of that for their customers or their employees if they saw
Free
fit.
parking and purchase of $50.
Yeah, that type of arrangement. So they would just have to know the customer's plate number. They currently do pay by space. He said it's much better to do pay by plate, and that's the way that they are headed. So it seems like Passport is our choice. And they said they can implement, it usually takes 6 to 7 weeks. They could try to make it happen in 4, but if we were to approve this tonight, we would, you know, be plenty of time for the May.
And we're still gonna do the pay and display this summer, as we said before.
Yeah, yeah. So we keep everything the same, but add this as another option.
Amenity.
Yeah, what very good work. Thank you.
I've learned a lot.
Absolutely.
So I will make a motion to approve the proposal from Passport that includes a 50-cent bundled fee passed on to the Parker and waived implementation fees.
I second that.
Second by Hannah, all in favor?
Kudos.
Anything else on the streets?
I'm happy to entertain any other questions. We do plan to start the culvert project soon. That will come up under the grants report. And I'm not sure where we want to cover the salt shed. That's on our new agenda.
It's on the new agenda, just checking that, so why don't we wait, so we don't omit anything on that.
And I'll talk about trees in a separate tree report.
Okay, so motion to accept the streets report. So moved by Jean, second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
Buildings committee.
So we have one action item tonight, which hopefully will be nice and speedy to move through. I'll just pass these around. So as everybody's aware, we have budgeted and are planning to do some renovations in here, painting, lighting, etc. And in order to move forward on that, the buildings committee has brought forward 2 different swatches with one preference, I think, that some of us share. So I'll go ahead and send that around. There are 2 swatches. I'd ask, I've already made some marks on here. I'm gonna actually, to make this easy, I'm gonna cross those out. If you would just put a little something on it for your preference, but Cindy and I and Ellen dropped in on our meeting as well, have a preference for the Kennebunkport green, which is on the top swatch here. So we can get a consensus tonight. Mitch and I can continue to do the planning and scheduling for paint and that kind of thing. We're not going to make a final decision on it until the lights have gone in, so that we can have an idea of what the lighting will be like in here, because it's going to be softer. It's not going to be this very bright white light. It's going to be warmer, maybe the term, I guess, for it. So we will reevaluate one last time after that lighting's gone in, but I'll pass these around. So they're also, just so everybody's aware, we're taking a look at our the ongoing cleaning of the fire department and of the village hall, 3 floors. Our expectations of the firm that's doing the cleaning of our facilities is pretty comprehensive, and it's more than clear to our village staff that some of those obligations are falling by the wayside. So we're evaluating that, and I'll make sure that everybody stays informed on our discussions going forward. So if anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer those. Otherwise, I have nothing else.
Motion to accept buildings, moved by Cindy, second by Jean, all in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, we can call it this, but we call it conversations.
This is finance and personnel.
Thank you. Well, again, in your packet, you have the wealth management statement for review for the LSAT program. And in the office, but not in your packet, is the cash management statement for the RBC program, if anyone wishes to have a look at that. You reviewed invoices and bank reconciliations at the March 24th Finance Committee meeting. In the sales tax report, the sales tax report shows an increase January over January, about a $3,400 increase. And we had budgeted, which is kind of interesting, we had budgeted $310,000 of anticipated revenues. And we're on trend for about 100,000 more than that, 411,000. And of course, that's if things stay static from here on in. But if that trend upwards continues, it could be more than that. So that's a good bit of news. We have Penflex has prepared the eligibility calculations for those who will be benefiting by the service program, and it is up to us to approve the Penflex statement. And what we can then do is vote to approve it, and each of us has to sign it. I
I
assume you
have
want
it
to
right
get that
here.
done. We want to get that done
Anybody
tonight.
wants to review it?
And then it'll be posted for review at the fire hall. So I guess I should make a motion first that we approve this Penflex report, and and then request that each member of the board sign.
So you made that motion. Do people want to review this at all as it goes by, or?
This is for the posting purposes, right? I mean, so we are going to get feedback from the membership itself. This is just to get it
Get it
in front
right.
of everybody. So I have no objection to taking time to look through it. But each member is going to fly spec his own or her own.
The complete report's in there.
It's, Jean has the packet, there's only one, I believe, I mean, that's what Doug handed me, I have no idea.
Well, if everyone, sometimes we do kind of look over, but if everyone is, and I know some of you abstain, so if you're comfortable with it, I'll probably wait until I sign it, till I read it all, but
So if by all means, when do we want to give ourselves a deadline to come back to the office and look at it?
or they can be glancing at it too as it
During the
goes
meeting.
around.
You can sign it at the end of the night if you have time.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah, I'd like to take a
Sure.
brief look at it before I put my.
All right, so why don't you proceed a little bit?
Right. So we have to tap our contingency account. In our budget, it's in the A fund, 1999-0470. And we have budgeted $125,000, none of which has been used yet this fiscal year. But we have, for new vehicles, we have need of adding a payment for unallocated insurance in the amount of $3,912.23. Under the clerk, we have two items. under professional and technical, the need to expend $2,033. We've had quite a spike in advertising costs for employees and other public notices, legal notices. And then for operation and maintenance of the clerk's office, we have another $7,006.61. So I would move that we move from our contingency account into those three line items, a total of $12,951.84. I'll itemize them each. One is special items, A 1910-470, unallocated insurance, $3,912.23. A 1410-440, $2,033. And A 1410-460, $7,006.61.
Right, so motion made by Joe, second by Richard, all in favor?
Aye.
We have an EFC principal payment. This isn't something to be voted on, but I did want to note that the original payment we budgeted for was $137,000. Actually, strike that. The budgeted amount was $173,862, and because of a grant we received, that affects our principal payment obligation, and it is reduced to $137,000, which is due April 22nd. And say again.
This is the wastewater treatment plant, and what happened was we had received that 1 million from the water quality improvement plan grant. So once we paid off $1 million of our basically short-term loan from EFC, it reduced the amount that we owe. So
Yeah,
it is now 137.
This is from the G Fund 9710-670. That's where the payment would be made from.
So motion made by Joe, second by Cindy, all in favor?
Aye.
As to the next item is we have a general code invoice of $1,195. And again, this general code preparation codifies the village laws that are passed over, say, the previous 2 years. I think we're doing it 2 years worth.
Yeah, I think this is the annual maintenance fee though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was looking
Yeah,
at
this
this.
is the annual.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So we owe this every year
Every
so
year.
that they to maintain it on our.
My mistake.
No.
Well, I do move that we pay that annual maintenance fee of $1,195.
Motion made by Joe, second by
Second.
Mac, all in favor?
And then we have from the Unistat a fee of $4,500 for the preparation of our bond anticipation notes. And I move we approve the payment.
This is pertains to the 5.5 mil ban that we took in January for double day. So Joe made the motion, second by Cindy, all in favor?
Aye.
And the next item is we have the new Durango we purchased has an insurance premium that has to be paid. The invoice from the insurance company, NFP, is there, and the price is $315.70, and I move the approval of that.
Second by Cindy, all in favor?
Quick question, when is that projected to be delivered?
June.
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 So there's an ancillary item to that brought to my attention and Ellen's attention at our finance committee meeting. We're purchasing equipment to outfit.
Everybody should have that sheet underneath your new agenda. Sorry to interrupt.
It's the last.
It's a
it looks
separate
like
sheet.
this.
Deb handed it out.
Right. Okay. So that lists the equipment that we will be purchasing for this. The key, though, is to get this ordered now for payment in the next fiscal year. So we've contacted the vendor, and all we have to do is to get the ordering started because of supply chain issues. There's a long lead time. I move that we vote in favor of purchasing the police equipment that will, if it costs $12,338.17, it will be a disbursement from our 2022-23 budget. But if we can,
I think we have to move it now in this budget.
we do,
Yeah, because we need to put together a purchase, in order that a purchase order can be generated. So,
okay, that was what was confusing me with Deb. They didn't-
well, you know what, when I have to be in the office later and we got discussing this.
Okay,
If you look, you get your packet, you look in this, you will note that we had actually moved funds last June, right before the close of last fiscal year. We put some money over into police reserve and then we pulled it back out, thinking we were gonna need it for like the passport system, which we did not end up doing. So there is a surplus there. So we're gonna use, we're transferring those funds in that line, which was like contract professional services. She wrote this down and she can confirm it. We're gonna move it into 3310-460. So that, which is police equipment, so that a PO can be generated. We're transferring the
Okay.
funds.
I'm glad that was clear because it didn't make sense how.
And there was a reason.
Okay.
I'll second your motion.
I have
And
a question, which I don't know if any of us can answer this. Universal laptop cradle does not include power supply. One of the things that you brought up, Joe, was it'd be nice for them to have a way to have their laptop not to run from the car battery. You have to have the car running, and I don't know if this has anything to do with that or not, but.
Right, and Frank said he was gonna be looking into, either battery sources or, I was even envisioning some sort of a plug-in. I know that's a little awkward if you're tearing out on your police car and if you have to unplug if you have it plugged in at the curbside. But excellent point. I hadn't picked up on that.
I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not, but.
Well, if it's not configured to take an external power supply, then we'll be stuck with never being able to do it, right?
Our ambulances have, and it's maybe different equipment, but they have all of their stuff runs without having to have the engine running.
So what do we do about that?
I think we need to lock this in because this quote is only good for a short period of
30
time.
days.
And what we're finding is, whether it's a sweeper or everything, we're seeing increases. So we'll lock this in, we'll get a definitive answer, but we need to lock this in.
And we can add on this.
So moved.
I think the motion was made and
And
seconded, and there was just a question. So all in favor?
Aye.
And if there's an increase, we could look at it next Monday, correct?
Right.
So we're meeting next Monday.
Oh, and we need to approve a bond resolution that will enable us to prepay $270,000. The way this will work is we take our action and then we'll publish notice of our intent to do that. And apparently there's an opportunity for comment period, and then we can actually make the payment again in the new fiscal year in June. So as I understand, this resolution is for the purpose of publication, and at the end of the comment period, we will have the authority and the money in the new fiscal year to pay. Or is there a similar?
We have to authorize this redemption of this bond prior to its maturity.
Right.
This otherwise would mature in 2020. Just to give you a little bit of background, if you look at your budget, this would be the 2012 water and sewer. And interestingly, those were actually improvements that were a 2003 bond. And when I haven't just know this because I fixated on it when I first came on the board in 2011, they were at like 6.8% interest. And of course, we weren't earning that in the bank or anything, and it was and those rates were going to increase. And just as you will note, these rates increase, they always increase. So we did refinance it was less than 2 in that initial opening period in 2012. It's now up to 2.25 and we'll go to 3.25 by 2028. This was for water and sewer improvements. This specifically, what we would be paying off is for the sewer. If you remember during the whole discussions about the wastewater treatment plant, there was like a fuel tank that ultimately had to be dug up. It had been kind of remediated in 2003. So we're paying, this was covering things that were done almost 20 years ago and have now been removed and superseded anyway. We also have a great deal of funds in our sewer account, both there's a capital account and in the cash account over several million. So it behooves us to just pay this off so that, because ultimately we're going to have to, whatever we don't pay off with our grants on our wastewater treatment plant project, we are going to be, that will be a long-term battle. Right now it's short-term financing. So it just behooves us to kind of clear the decks on that one.
I move we do that.
Yep, moved by Joe, second by Cindy, all in favor?
Aye.
I'll drop down to one more expenditure in personnel and then get back to abstracts and transfers. Our assistant at the wastewater treatment plant, Quentin Hassick, has to take a basic operations class. It's scheduled for SUNY Mooresville in April. And we need to authorize a credit card payment of $975 for that. And I move we approve
Moved
that.
by Joe, second by Mac, all in favor?
Aye.
And finally, there are abstracts and transfers accounted for in your packet, and I move we approve them.
Second by Cindy, all in favor?
Aye.
And I think that completes.
I think it does. So moving on to capital projects, there'll be another one on our second agenda tonight, but for Doubleday Field, I move that we pay the SJB invoice in the amount of $380. Second by Cindy, all in favor? Again, for Doubleday Field, our general contractor Bunkoff, pay app number 8 in the amount of $50,778. Second by Hannah, all in favor?
Aye.
Doubleday Field again, Delaware Engineering Professional Services, invoice number 16 in the amount of $2,167.50. Second by Hannah, all in favor?
Aye.
Wastewater treatment plant, Delaware Engineering Professional Services, invoice number 64 in the amount of $8,067.50. Second by Mac, all in favor?
Aye.
And the Skylight Project, invoice number 2948 from HKK in the amount of $1,501.76.
That should actually be for the third floor windows.
Oh, you're right, it says window. So these were the drawings for that?
Yes.
All right. Make that notes, Jenna. Second
Second.
by Cindy, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. We now have moved on to grants and projects update. Nothing really new to report on WW, on the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. Municipal Solutions in the Village are still working on the DASNY grants. And we're hoping to get those moving along. They're at they've been submitted to their finance level, so we're just waiting for an approval there. Someday it would be so nice not to have TEP on here, but essentially it's not on there for us. We are done. We are happy campers. But New York State DOT and the engineers, B&L, are still waffling through some paperwork, trying to resolve several things. Doubleday Field, you'll see an amendment, on the other agenda. We'll be dealing with an observation cost associated with concluding Doubleday, and we are in the process of getting quotes for bleachers.
Can I ask a question about Doubleday Field? I noticed how they were describing the different phases of the project, and there's been completion, and I'm gonna have look for final completion for the grandstand in June. But what is our recourse? I mean, I've noticed a lot of separation in elevation from brick to sidewalk. There's a lot of settling that's going on that is gonna be tricky.
On the
hazards.
parking lot
The
area.
parking lot and the area around that, and it just seems to have gotten worse, and I don't know if there's a
Are you talking about the entrance off Main Street?
entrance off Main Street and
That
also,
always was,
Yeah, but it's bad up by the laundromat and
Yes,
there-
and-
it did not winter well. By the
Right.
Sandlot kid, there's a lot of uneven.
yeah,
Yes.
and also up where they went out of their way to take those pavers with the memorial, statements in them, that's now
Yeah.
not flush with the surface, so there's a lot of pretty quickly occurring.
Yeah.
What I would call
It's like
failure.
the compaction was not adequately addressed before the finished
Yeah.
coat was put down.
Do we have recourse? I mean, I'm only bringing it up because the project isn't finally complete by their
but
lights.
that was our thing, though. We did pull, because we knew we weren't gonna be able, because of all the soil remediation along the third baseline, that we didn't, if you recall, we didn't even go to bid on that until last September 2021. The original intent was to work through the winter, and which we did, and we paid those costs because we did not know there was going to be a pandemic, and it was going to be already in 2020. So there was work through the winter months, and I think we're seeing some of that result. It was done by July 2020 when we wanted it to be. So that phase is almost 2 years old now. And so I don't think there's recourse. We can look back and certainly discuss that with the engineers, et cetera. But it was a different contractor than, this phase now.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what it's an issue.
I mean, there are spaces where it's a hazard.
Yeah.
Pedestrian hazard around the Sandlot kid in particular, and in front of the dry cleaners. You're
One of the
saying.
dry cleaners by the parking lot entrance and up by the entrance to the building itself.
By the grandstand.
By the, yeah.
Right. All right, we will certainly look at that. Again, that was certainly an issue, and as you know, we shut down the building project because working through the winter can be difficult, but at that time, that was the approach we took because we thought we were having a large induction in July 2020, which did not pan out, and we were going to be ready for that, so.
The only other thing I don't know if we're at that item yet with the extension of services, is it principal or who agreed to stay on for another 7 months because we don't have WH Lane? It's still.
That will cover that isn't that on here?
Yeah,
Yes.
we got an original.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll wait. I thought I had seen.
Oh, wait, there is, it's number 1 on the additional agenda.
Oh, I thought we had something in our original packet.
Moving on, Cindy, do you want to say anything about the Grove Street? I know it's going to be starting in a couple weeks and NICEAG's in there cutting some trees.
Yeah, we look forward to starting. I think the one thing that I will point out is that the properties to the south of the project site have changed ownership. And so you may have seen in one of the water sewer minutes that the new owner of those properties is being encouraged to work independently with a contractor if there are changes that they need to have done to their future plans that are outside the scope of the village project.
Skylight project?
You wanna say
Cindy, you do the honors.
it? So the skylight is coming soon.
Is there a library near you?
I think there's a stair tower outside. I did not check. The weather has not
Yes, there's
been.
a scaffolding, we put that up Friday, it took a long time.
Yeah, they were.
All I heard was banging.
They were gonna put it up and the weather was bad. And in any case, that's going up. They're going to be removing the old skylight. They're going to be doing the required environmental remediations. Our architect's gonna come and check things out and make sure it's all ready for the new skylight to be set up there, but the new skylight exists. And our contractors have it, and the glass has made its way from Canada, and everything's coming together with the skylight.
That is great.
The end is in sight.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Downtown Wi-Fi, they have communicated, they're gonna be reaching out to Mitch next week to sort of, let them know exactly when they'll be, what, working on the street. Then they're hoping the week of April 11th, they'll be able to get some asphalt, because that's the first thing they gotta do is cut across Pioneer Street to reinstall conduit that was removed. So that's what they'll be doing. Elevator replacement project?
This
Yeah.
one I'm happy to mention, or less happy to mention, I suppose. Cindy gets the good news, I'm bringing the bad news. So, well, there's good and bad. Back in August, we were told and were under the impression that our elevator was being manufactured. That is not true. It just started being manufactured. So the good news is it's happening. The bad news, it appears that the individual who is apparently no longer with said manufacturer, lied to us for 8 months that it was in production, and it was not, which I think is, deeply problematic. That a manufacturer who we were relying on and been stalled for quite a period of time was blatantly misleading the village as to the status of the manufacturing. Now that person that was our point of contact is gone. Unfortunately, I don't really think that there's anything that we can do about it other than be happy that now we've confirmed that it is in progress. So,
And potentially beginning of June,
Yeah.
Mitch said, so.
Yep.
It will be.
And I did learn today that our new contact person is the son of the owner of the elevator company, so I was assured that there should not.
You have a very responsible person.
fantastic.
Well, maybe. Nepotism.
I don't think there's anything to report on Lakefront. I think there's a few dollars left in there for Michael Haas, but as soon as he sort of figures that out, we can basically close that project and submit for the grant reimbursement.
Will that leave us with a complete package, a complete design? that we're going to get?
A design that it can then be used to
Engineer.
to do subsequent engineering, but it also to be used to submit it for a grant or anything.
So the idea is to essentially just goes on hold until there is grant funding that we would want to compete
Yeah,
for.
I can't imagine that we could afford to, because it's estimated, it's in the, I thought this was less than I thought it would be, but it was like 250 or 270, and I thought it'd be much more than that, but that is not in the funding budget. we, certainly, we got that grant from Parks. I don't know if they didn't like our design, they wanted a different type, who knows with Parks. But today, it certainly can submit a grant again. And that would be something that we would approve when, the CFAs open up, which ones, if that is available, which ones we want to do.
So you're saying something more needs to be done in the planning process to then be
Well,
able to get
his
the-
estimate was like 26,000, I don't have the figures right in front of me, 300, and he hasn't utilized all those funds yet.
and he
So
has
I
to
want,
utilize
in
them all.
order to do the grant processing, we would need to, show that. I mean, we could certainly be reimbursed for less money potentially. But just follow up on that. So you can bring Sydney up to speed on that. Perfect. Are you here to be sworn in tonight, or
I could be.
are you going to be talking at Parks?
I'm just here to talk about the signage.
All right, okay, well, your timing is absolutely impeccable, as we are now at Parks.
So. let's see. Going through, we had, I don't know, we discussed caretakers. And last year there was a lot of difficulty with caretakers are there 24/7 and really need a break. And it came up that maybe we could somehow fund somebody to be a substitute caretaker and, like work 1 day a week at one of the parks to give people a break. I don't know if that's something we can.
Were there,
do.
I'm not that familiar with the caretakers this year. Were they single individuals?
Both of them were single, and obviously a couple is the perfect thing, although, it's still, you're there all the time.
Yeah.
One person's mother and maybe sister gave them a break sometimes, and then the other person utilized a lifeguard, which was problematic, because then the lifeguard couldn't lifeguard.
So that lifeguard is supposed to be on duty on the dock and?
No, well, right, so he was scheduled as a lifeguard, but then needed to be a caretaker when the caretaker wasn't available.
Okay.
So then we had to
Yeah.
close one of the parks because we didn't have enough lifeguards.
Yeah, there were times in the past when we had enough lifeguards and the lifeguards were scheduled for the dock, but then sometimes that senior lifeguard would fill in.
Yeah.
And that seemed a workable solution, certainly not taking them off the dock, but if there's full coverage on the dock to utilize.
So maybe we can hire extra lifeguards. If we have them, so that there's leeway, so lifeguards could relieve the caretaker.
We were kind of short on lifeguards last year.
Well, we were when they had to be a caretaker.
Yeah.
So just,
Yeah,
it definitely makes the caretaking position less desirable to not have any possibility for a break,
Mhm.
so.
They are 24/7 though.
Well, no, but
Till dusk
yeah,
and they open
10
at-
AM till 9 PM.
Yeah.
That's pretty much,
Mhm.
yeah. So.
Mhm.
And Lakefront Concert Series, we're ramping up. Randy Smith and Tara from the Chamber are helping again with the Lakefront Concert Series. We're hoping to start concerts at 6:30 instead of 7 this year, so that we don't run into darkness. Just wanted to make sure if there wasn't a strong feeling that we shouldn't do that. Okay. I also, what's that? No, he bowed out last year. I would like to propose making the concert series from July to August a special event, so that we could potentially have food trucks again.
Second.
Motion made, seconded by Rich, any discussion? Everyone's like ready to put their own, all in favor?
Aye.
We already kind of talked about the sheriff's vote. Is there any more discussion?
I think we did that. I think we-
I've never done this.
And then, coming to Will Walker,
Oh, before we do that, I don't want to,
sure.
but unless I just noticed a discrepancy on the tree issue,
I noticed that too.
that is, our streets, our trees committee says, treat the trees. This says, cut them down because, you treat the trees because cutting them down doesn't eliminate the pest. So I noticed the two different reports and
So we were initially told that the trees, there are some trees in Ferry Spring that are so close together and so badly.
You know, even if they
Diseased.
didn't have HWA, they're like this and all dead on, you know, the sides that are close to each other. So are you going to invest the funds, and it can be kind of expensive, anywhere from $1 to $1.50 per cubic inch to treat a tree. So, you know, do you expend the funds on those? There's been a little different information provided. It doesn't kill it. What it does is essentially, if the trees are cut and the branches are left in situ, the adelgid will be there, but it won't go through another breeding cycle. But there is no adelgid on the trunks, so the trunks could go down the road and be transported. But, you know, what we're trying to figure out at this point is the spraying cost and what is involved. So,
I wasn't looking at it as a benefit cost. I would just say one was pronounced ineffective and then it was said it was preferred. So I think we just need to
it
recognize.
depends on, you know, there was sort of two minds at the Cornell Hemlock Initiative. One group said, yeah, you might want to cut those, but you aren't going to invest in that amount of money to save these trees that are adjacent to each other. I know,
The folks at Cornell,
I'm sorry,
the folks at Cornell.
right, but the individual that, from the Catskill tree that, I think his name, Devin.
Devin is the one who works for Clark.
Right, he met with them, he joined that fellowship, and they said they were inclined to cut them. So you're kind of getting conflicting advice is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So at this point, we are not. The only reason we quickly moved on that was there was a period of time, and it's really almost past now, where you could cut and they weren't in the crawly stage. So that is now pretty much past. We had those funds in parks, and what we're gonna do is pull them and put them in reserves. So when we figure out how we're gonna be moving forward, we can treat the trees at Ferry Spring.
So they're in fact not being.
Cut, they are not being cut. It's too late really now.
So we, a long time ago, talked with Will Walker about the historical signage specifically at Council Rock. And he and his students were gonna look into that, and they came up on some roadblocks for that particular wording, and it's on hold. But Will has some other ideas about Mill Island, yeah, which is not a park, but it's village land.
So Mill Island is currently the parking lot down below Bassett Hospital. Parking lot number 3? Three, parking lot number 3. But in the 19th century, it was known as Mill Island because that's where the mills were. There was a grist mill and a sawmill. And then later the village waterworks went there, and it's still there. And so that's why, as I understand it, that there's village property on Mill Island as well as the dam, near the dam. So yes, we ran up against some challenges with the interpretation of Council Rock, specifically related to our outreach to the Mohawk and Oneida nations. Specifically, the Mohawk Nation felt very strongly that this is Mohawk territory and wanted to have a particular consultant be involved in that process. And so we need to work through that relationship a little bit more to be able to advance the Council Rock signage in consultation, as it should be, with the Mohawk Nation. But Mill Island is really part of the same cultural landscape as Council Rock. It's really part of the same story there. And the advantage of Mill Island is that there is currently no signage. And in fact, most, if not all, Cooperstonians have no awareness that this is a historically and culturally significant place. So there's a real opportunity there to call people's attention to this history. And there's an opportunity to tell Indigenous history through this space. The way that my students and I sort of came to this understanding of the importance of this space for Indigenous people is actually through Susan Fenimore Cooper's writing. So in her book, Rural Hours, she writes about Haudenosaunee Iroquois people coming to Mill Island regularly every year and camping there. And these Haudenosaunee women, and actually there were families, but there were Iroquois women, specifically Oneida women, she identifies them as Oneida, who went through the village selling their baskets. This is in the 1840s. So we have, really hard evidence of Native people right here in Cooperstown. And that story is directly attached to Mill Island. So there's an opportunity in this space to tell the story of Susan Fenimore Cooper, James Fenimore Cooper's daughter, who was an important environmental writer, pioneering environmental writer. Her book, Rural Hours, actually predated Walden. To tell the story of early industry in Cooperstown through the mills and the waterworks, and also to tell our Indigenous history. So it's really, there's so much rich interpretive potential at this space. Unfortunately, it's a parking lot. I would love it to be a park. And maybe down the road, we can work towards that with Bassett. I know that's a little high in the sky, but that's the dream, and I'm just putting it out there. I think, and I have worked with Dr. Rich Brown and some other folks over the past few years to kind of put that idea in their ears. to think about it as potentially a healing space, a healing garden, a healing park, where we could also tell this cultural story. And that's a work in progress, still working on that idea. But we can make a start here by adding some interpretive signage to Mill Island. And it's a space that a lot of people pass by, a lot of people see. Certainly the hospital employees are walking up and down that hill all the time. A lot of people are driving, down Mill Street, going over the bridge, over the dam. So there's an opportunity to get the message out, and even to perhaps attract a few of our visitors to that space as well. I think my students looked not only at the history here and did some research, they also made some recommendations on signage, what might be effective. And we think a combination of perhaps a traditional marker, which could be funded by the Pomeroy Foundation, as the markers at the Presbyterian Church where Tom Heinz and I and others worked on. That could be a nice recognizable landmark. But if you want to tell a fuller story, additional interpretive signage would be needed, because you can only put about 20 words on a traditional historical marker. Basically, all you would be doing is calling people's attention to the fact that this place used to be called Mill Island. And there used to be mills here, and maybe some indigenous people once came here, right? If you had 2 or 3 other signs, you could go into more depth about the presence of Haudenosaunee, indigenous, Mohawk, Oneida people on this landscape. The story of Susan Fenimore Cooper and the story of industry. And we also had some students from our science track thinking about some of the native plant life that you could interpret, because Susan Fenimore Cooper writes very eloquently about the flora and fauna of our region. So there's just tremendous potential here, and it wouldn't cost all that much money to do it. So that's what I hope the trustees will support.
What would you envision the signs being, since it's Bassett property and we have some village property by the building, of course, but.
Right, so there's kind of a railing now by the waterworks. So I was thinking in my students that you could have 1 or 2 signs there, and then 1 or 2 down by the dam.
There's sense of our property line here.
Yeah, I can look it up. I think Will did, you checked out the county map to see where the village lines were.
It could be double checked.
We'll double check.
So you think
We looked at
come all the
historic.
way to that rail practically?
I can't say that with confidence.
But I'll let you know if it's good.
I hope so.
And there's also that over
By the dam.
just past the dam by McKenna's property, isn't there a little sort of green patch
Yes.
that's village? As you curve onto Brooklyn Avenue, there's quite a bit of open space.
Yeah.
It's actually a nice little grave area. It's not that small a space, actually, for the purpose you mentioned.
Well, thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, well, thank you for initiating.
Very appreciative of
Let me
it.
ask you one more question. How contested was the interest between Oneida and Mohawk of this area, or was it?
Well, I will tell you that when we reached out to the Mohawk Tribal Preservation Office, the officer there said unequivocally, this is Mohawk territory. But we also know that Oneida people did visit this area.
So they're gonna go to war over this.
course.
I mean, actually a long dispute that dates back as far as the Revolutionary War. So we have frontage on Mill Street all along the waterworks property. That's our frontage.
It comes up to the sidewalk.
On the hospital side of the dam. And we have frontage actually all around the corner.
So this property is.
To Brooklyn. So we have 3 different parcels there that are in village ownership.
We hadn't even considered the other side of the bridge, so that's great, and now there's another space.
If you're down there, there's a nice patch of green.
Cindy, I'm trying to envision it, the strip of green that runs along the water's edge. You've got the parking lot, green space, water. Is that village owned that wraps around, or okay, it's
No,
private
that's-
property?
But it sounds like we do have some property here, and quite frankly, I could really see the type of interpretive signage we put on our main street for our rain gardens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That type could really, be used. I don't think everyone saw kind of that research that, so
just to you and Cindy.
So Jean, can you send that on to Jenna and everybody else so they can all be, that's what I wasn't ignoring. I was reading because it was very good research that you had provided. So please send that on so everybody else can be looking at that. And we certainly can be thinking about it. I don't know if we'll leave it in parks or where exactly, but I think we can definitely be thinking of ways to improve signage and interpretation down there, particularly now that we know we have space to do it in.
So one of the best things to do is get a map that gives Will the land that's ours.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. That was all very
Thank you.
helpful. Really appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
Nice
Thanks
to
for
see you.
initiating the process,
Thank
and yes, I'll pass that along to the students, and thank you to Cindy too for supporting this whole process as well throughout.
Thank you.
My apologies.
We're nearly done.
I know, still.
Yeah.
Did she want me to walk out?
Yeah, that'd be great, thanks.
Excuse me.
Other questions on anything else?
I have a question about the statement by Mr. Lytle that the governor has increased the funding by 30%. I assume that's in the state park budget, not the local.
And then like the governor.
He said, he read it in his, it sounded like, around there, something.
I think it's for
Specifically.
state parks, not for council.
No, is that what it says though? I just meant to say the governor increased park funding that could be used for local
Yeah,
projects.
I don't know that it will ever be possible.
I'll try to.
I mean, that may not be what was said at the meeting, but I'm fairly sure.
I think he was saying, he actually said just in general,
That the
like,
budget was increased.
we should be looking for grant money
Oh, yeah.
because there's more grant money out there than there used to be. And it got tied back probably because Council Rock, the steps were repointed this past year. And though they did a good job, they said these need to be replaced. They need a serious overhaul and we need a lot of money for that, so that's a grant.
And it'd be nice to get the markers.
So the only thing that I will say is that taking state money for that park will initiate state control.
Right.
To some extent.
We don't really want that.
To a degree, you don't think, I think. So what could they possibly do there if by deed it's forever wild?
I don't know what they could do there, but we do know whenever we do state funding on a park, that we do have to, we enter into a voluntary.
It's a covenant on the deed, that is correct.
So is the staircase part of the Forever Wild deeded area or is
The
that
whole park, yes.
I don't know if the staircase was part of a separate parcel at one point.
It certainly was, and that was put in by the Garden Club in 1937, because it was essentially a continuation of River Street, and they did all that. The second parcel there was a second piece of property, but when it became a dedicated parkland, which it did become, that deed includes all of it, I believe.
So we couldn't do with that Forever Wild, in the interest of stabilization of the cliff, we couldn't put.
Oh,
You
no,
know,
the
stone
Forever
walls and
Wild
terraces.
is, you can't put, for instance, when the Friends of the Parks would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and serve coffee on the morning of the canoe races to benefit the parks, they couldn't put their coffee urn in that park because it was commercial. 'Cause it's
No
commercial.
signage,
No signage,
no
it's totally, yeah, that's what it means by.
Okay, but we could build terraces and have it more handicap friendly.
We could certainly do a path down, like a serpentine path down too, that would be in keeping and
Which is
appropriate,
in our long-term.
which was in there, yeah.
And so this is where, though, accepting state money could potentially bind us in some ways, because it may
Have to make
It may
accessible.
force us to deal with the Americans with Disabilities Act
Right.
in very specific ways.
First race.
Well,
No.
I know.
That Council Rock.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
I mean, I will tell you, we ran into this on River Street because we very much wanted to incorporate accessible routes that got rid of those stairs. But in working with New York State DOT, they needed that to be done their way, not the way that we thought was in keeping with that corner. And I would hate to enter into a similar type of dispute over.
And if we end up doing those stairs, we'll probably want to redo the sewer line under it. Because that's where the sewer line runs around the bend and then.
Runs on Lake Street, I would imagine, that's in the street, I would imagine.
No,
it's in the
the
street, it's
sewer,
under the
no, it's down, way down low. You can,
Oh,
you
really?
can see the manholes down in the park, in Council Rock
Oh,
Park.
wow.
And they run, I believe they come under that staircase or right in front of it.
Really,
I could be
certainly
wrong, but
ask
that's-
Mitch, you know.
Yeah, I think John mentioned it.
Any other questions on parks?
Motion to accept the report
So moved.
by Max, second by Anna, all in favor. We lied.
There's
Wow.
more. Friends of the Parks wants to, we've already approved that they're donating a water fountain to us to go in Badger Park. They would like to donate bicycle racks for Lakefront and Badger Park. Is there a problem with that?
I would, probably just the design, right?
And
You know,
they
what's
were wondering if it should be the same design as what we have.
on our main street, yeah.
I said probably, but
Isn't it location too? Where would they go?
Plenty of room in Badger Park.
right, I mean, Badger Park would be easy. Lakefront, I think we need to just be careful that we're not ruining the.
Well, and they might want to be at the top of the hill because many people who ride their bikes would dismount at the top. They don't have to
That's a
ride
good
back
point.
up.
Yeah. Yeah. Does that need to come to the board for approval for us to accept them?
We should probably have a kind of a picture of what they're planning. And, you know, the Parks Board could sort of make a recommendation on location in both
Okay,
the
yep.
Badger and Lakefront Park.
Yep.
Just to facilitate our approval.
And one more thing,
Mhm.
and I know the answer because it came up last year, but they wanted to put another kayak rack because they are the ones who built or donated the kayak racks.
No, they did the design, we
They
paid
did,
for.
okay, good to know, okay. They would like to have another one in 3 Mile Park. And I think this came up last year, there's really not room. but I
There
wanted
wasn't
to-
room, but, you know what, can you follow up with, Mitch? And just kind of, you know, I know we did add one about 2 years ago or something. Yeah, a couple years ago, and just logistically, there isn't a lot of space.
Right, okay, so I'll double check, but, okay, that's all, sorry.
We accepted that report. Moving on, tree committee.
All right, so I was just checking online to make sure I had my date absolutely right. So this year marks the 150th anniversary of Arbor Day. And so there is nationally, you know, a lot of people about celebrating that. We will do our traditional thing, planting a mayor's memorial tree. And the plan is for that to be in honor of Paul Kuhn, and we're working on a location and a particular date. Technically, Arbor Day is at the end of April, given our weather. We often push it into the beginning of May to ensure that it's not snowing when we plant. So that's certainly one thing that we will be doing. The committee suggested 2 other things potentially for Arbor Day. The first is to fly an Arbor Day flag throughout the month of April and into the first week of May. That's when we do our planting. I believe that that requires an action from the trustees, even if it's on the flagpole out here on Fair Street. So I would like to make a motion to fly the Arbor Day flag, which is a white flag with a tree in the center of it in green that says Arbor Day, for the month of April and the first week of May. On the flagpole on Fair Street.
Motion made by Cindy, second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
And the other thing that we are working toward, although it's proving very complicated, the village has always accepted donations for memorial trees. There is a plaque upstairs in the hallway of the library. There are actually a pair of plaques now because we ran out of room on the first plaque, recognizing those memorial contributions. They are numbered, referring to a map. And Mitch has found a somewhat dated version of that map that has some of the information, but not all of the information on it. So we were thinking that it would be nice sometime in this year of the 150th anniversary of Arbor Day to create a digital version of that map that we could put on our website, and people can see the trees in the village that were planted in memory of village residents who are no longer with us. That's gonna take some serious reconstructing to do because there are decades missing from the only map that we've found so
We're
far.
still doing the tree saver thing, right? Yeah, we paid that fee.
I don't think we included it in the budget this year. We paid it last year. It would not be a good avenue for this.
No, but I'm just wondering, because they are numbered on there, instead of reinventing the wheel. At one point, we talked about if we didn't continue paying that annual fee, could we download the data in some format that was functional?
It would just be an Excel spreadsheet.
It would just be an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, it wouldn't be visual.
So the visual is just what they can provide on that. And did you decide, was there a reason you didn't put it forward? Did you decide it wasn't?
It cost us $1,500 and no one uses it. So it seems like money easily saved. I mean, it was a nice idea, but you know, it has not caught on. So more to come. I'm sure you'll hear about the map more in the future. I think we've gone over the memorial tree bit of this. We've already started talking about the hemlock woolly outfit. As we've heard, there's been some conflicting information. It does seem that generally
what is considered the best approach, regardless of a few trees that we may decide to take down, is to use each of the trunks of the trees so that we can actually kill these little insects before they continue to spread. There are certain times of the year when that can be done. There's a very specific license that is required to do it. I had Jenna put in the packet the sort of non-scientific version of what this pesticide is all about. There are other sources that you can find online that give you more of the scientific specifications and chemical specifications of this. Among pesticides, it is considered less harmful to most types of life, short of insect life, especially when applied to hemlock trees, because it is most toxic when it is ingested. And most people and most mammals and pollinating species don't use hemlock trees as food. And that includes honeybees, right? Because they pollinate through wind-blown pollen as opposed to insect-delivered pollen. You probably read on here about how this reacts with water. One of the reasons to do the more expensive treatment, which is to, apply this to the trunks rather than to ground soak, is to make even more sure that there's no contamination of the lake, given where these are growing. We are still finding out more about who can potentially do this and about the cost associated with it. But the window for spraying is very brief in the spring before these little guys become active again. And so the village of Cooperstown has a no pesticide resolution. We don't use pesticides, although we have, in certain situations where we understood the benefit of using pesticides, created exceptions to that policy. I would argue that this is one place where if we want to maintain a forested hillside on the east side of the lake, we really want to consider using sparingly applied pesticides to ensure we don't lose our forest.
It's tough. I mean, look at these impacts on wildlife in the second sheet there. It's pretty clear that something's going on. We all look at our little neck of the woods and say, well, it's just us doing it, but when you scale it up. And I think that's why the ecology is the stress that it is. I don't have a good, idea, feeling for it.
Joe, I will tell you that I've said that to Cornell, right? I've said it to the biologists and the insectologists and the water scientists and the plant people, and they have all said, this is really your best option.
Because if we lose all those trees, we lose the hillside as
You-
well,
you-
right?
Yeah,
Well, I know you get to the feeling that standing on the deck chairs was the best option too.
Right, I understand that, but I think the concern is if you lose all the trees on that side of the lake, that the erosion that will occur.
The road come down at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wildlife, everything.
Right, and again, I would like to know more about how that evolves, how the forest evolves when those trees go. Is it denuded or brush and other things take over and other
What
trees
is
take
it, Piscataway National Forest? Google that sometime and you will see that occurring. Because they got hit before any kind of approaches developed. I will say, we're not inventing the wheel here. This has been done on the shores of Lake George, which has been handling this issue. Because they have the same thing, a lot of hemlock on the shores of Lake George. the thing you have to remember, this is not a drenching, it is going solely on the bark from just above the ground to at most 6 feet. There is a limit to the amount of this material that can even be applied. It might not even get all the trees.
Right.
There's a set amount that can be applied to 1 acre, and you can't do any more than that. But the beauty is, you do it, and it can be effective for 7 years. If you can't do it near the lake water, so if you would have to go to an even more expensive than the $1 or $1.50 cubic inch spraying and go to an injection, which they did do up in Lake George.
So can there be a monitoring program that goes along with this to see what the impacts are?
Well, I
Would the
think
science,
there
would the
would
schools do that? I mean, we could,
A monitoring program in terms of,
to develop more data on the impacts of having done it. So if we save the trees, do we see increased mortality?
I mean, we could look at other places. I don't think we have a lot of time. We don't have a year to do a scientific study.
No, I'm saying we do it, but accompanying it will launch, or someone will.
If you can find someone who will, all the more power to you. I'm not sure, I can certainly ask at local colleges if somebody wants to take this on as like a thesis project, but I'm not sure, given the fact that this has been studied in other places, that there would be someone who was immediately receptive to.
So our decision is tonight to do something?
It's to, if we, I don't think we're probably gonna get anybody to spray this spring.
It doesn't seem like it. There are many things that would have to come into place in the next 3 weeks for us to spray this year, but if by chance, they did, having to call the board to, I mean, I guess the alternative is we have an emergency meeting to spray.
Well,
Or we say now, if we're able to, let's do it.
And we can make the decision contingent on availability or the ability to do
Yeah,
it.
no, I'm just saying to move forward, I think there needs to be a sense of the board that we approve using a pesticide in this very limited capacity to address this particular insect.
I think we should move on it. Just either we're gonna agree to do it or not.
And it's not like it's, again, it has to be a level 2 license, it's very controlled, only a certain amount can be applied in a certain square footage per year. It's very regulated, we're not, again, inventing the wheel, it was done in Lake George. And, we're trying to utilize some of their knowledge on it. I know Devin has spoken to people up there too, so.
Did Lake George say anything about any effects on their lake water or? I mean, I don't know how long have they been spraying. I guess the thought of course, of spraying pesticides makes me uncomfortable. I don't love the idea of doing it, but it sounds like the decision is either, wipe out the hemlocks on that side of the lake, and who's to say that hemlocks that don't come down won't become infected, and then we'll end up with what seems like a bigger situation with erosion from from pulling the trees, and we've seen that side of the lake road collapse, I believe, on 2 different occasions, I think, at least in my memory, but I might be off a little bit. And it's a main thoroughfare, important travel corridor also, in addition to wildlife and flora and fauna, et cetera. So
I mean, if you want to wait till next week, because we're meeting again next week, I can send there's a ton of scientific papers out there. I did not want to include them in the packets because they're each, 20 to 30 pages long.
this is a dilemma. There's no good path forward, but the realization, however carefully we think we're doing this, we're having yet another chemical impact, and that's what our world is, that's what's happening to our world. So these cumulative things really make a difference. Are we treating every tree or identified Are we doing this prophylactically or to?
No, just trees with identified outbreaks.
And if we don't, and if we happen to miss them, tough darts, we've missed them. Right, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of imperfection in the identification and.
No, there's no defect in the identification, you can see it.
No, when you do see it, but if you don't, but if it's incipient, if it's just beginning, and you don't see it and you pass your cycle, then they'll get established. We're identifying trees that are infected that we can.
I believe that when they do this sort of thing, again, it's a limited area they spray, but I mean, you can go up to Ferry's. You did the Zoom meeting, right, on that, and I don't know if you did one of the
It's too
field.
cold that day, you were like, God bless you, I wasn't.
All right, I went out there with extra socks on. You know this, you see it. You don't even need the little hooky to pull it down. You
No.
can stand there and it
It's
looks
like
like there's little
eyeball.
Christmas lights on the trees. This is an infection that maybe was only recognized in November or December, but they said it was probably there before. We've been told it's been there 2 or 3 years, so this is gone a bit here. They, when they do spray, if they can get sort of what they want, they'll do a little bit of a buffer around it as well.
So, Joe, just so I have your point clear, I mean, it is possible that in the spraying process, by the time it comes to its conclusion, that there are trees that could be missed. An outbreak, 2 years from now, we could go back to this general vicinity and say, the infection is continued.
Yeah.
So for me, it's also a decision about whether or not I think worth spraying pesticides on the lake's edge is worth it.
You can't go to the lake edge, you
And we
can't
can't.
spray.
Yeah, you
So
can't.
those trees are close to us anyway, right?
I mean, it might not be 2 feet from the water's edge, but it's very, very close. And I mean, it's hard for me to roll with that, if we look a year from now and say we didn't contain this infection, we still sprayed, we saved some trees, but it's continuing. And in the process, we dumped chemicals into the lake.
But you're not,
Well,
I mean, you're
that-
not.
that won't happen.
Chemicals
That
into the
part
lake
won't
is-
happen.
Yeah, that's the wrong approach.
Yeah.
And if we don't
Because it's
treat
not systemic, it's not going in the ground up the roots. You are spraying on the tree. And it's because these creatures basically live on the sap, so then when that goes up, that's what's killing them. And it protects that tree for 7 years. So, yeah, we might miss a tree, but if everything around that one tree has been treated, they're protected for 7 years.
And that's why this spring period is so critical, and we may not hit it, but treating trees before the next breeding cycle helps to ensure that there aren't algae that are moving on to other trees.
We'll probably be able to treat fewer trees if we did it sooner. We wait a couple years, we're gonna be treating more trees, which is more chemicals.
It's a tough decision. I guess I'm inclined, this is what I was starting, it's the impacts on the critters. And they all say varying degrees of degradation, but then you're having to do this balancing thing, and will that population recover once you've stabilized the tree situation and then everything is back to normal? So, yeah.
Okay.
You gotta,
All right.
before you can settle, I guess.
I agree, Joe.
Do go look at the Great Smoky Mountains, Pisgah National Park, Blue Ridge Parkway. These look like a fire has gone through there and just left gray stumps, tree stumps.
Can you spell that for me, Alan?
It's got PISGAH.
Does it?
No, just, I'll send you a link.
Spell exactly the way it sounds. Perfect.
Oh, PISGAH, Pisgah.
Wonderful.
So I think in order to move forward, in case we can take any action, I think it'd be good to have a vote to recognize that, in the confines of applicator and the regulations that are in effect for spraying this, which is a certain limitation per acreage, per year, et cetera. I think we need to know if we're willing to.
Yeah,
Concur
that's
with
what
this.
we need to know.
Yeah. Cindy, you want to make that?
I will make a motion recognizing the village's no pesticide policy. That in the case of the hemlock woolly algae, it may be necessary to use limited pesticide trunk treatment of infected hemlock trees to curtail the additional spread of this.
Motion made by Cindy, second by Jean. All in favor? All right, opposed?
Pesticides, but
Yeah, I think we all feel that way.
The only other tree related thing I will point out is NICEAG did do some trimming on Main Street. We were very concerned about, we've sometimes seen trees that NICEAG has trimmed and it's a very dramatic effect. If you drive up Main Street in front of the county building, it does not seem to have seriously impeded the aesthetic of that area when it comes to trees. You noticed it when you drove down the street.
I noticed the one full missing.
Yes, and two
And a
trees.
couple of awkwardly shaped
Yes.
trees, but
It could have been much.
it could have been
worse.
worse.
Yeah, I think we were all envisioning those trees that become like wines.
Yeah.
Cindy,
Yeah.
one thing for trees committee, I got a word from a business owner in the vicinity of Schneider's, Hubble Realty, Rudy's, the bookstore right there, that particular tree, which I think is right directly in front of the liquor store, is dead. Now, I don't know if that is entirely true, but I'm encouraging you to take a look at
Yeah,
it when
we
you
will
have a minute.
definitely keep an eye on it. We hear
Great.
this sort of every spring and some of them are just late bloomers, but
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
see. Literally, like, yeah.
I think they're, one of the things that leads them to think that has to do with the mountain of salt that is ending
Yes.
up in the rain gardens, which is probably not,
No, it's not.
so just
Okay.
figure I'd bring that to your attention.
So, a motion to accept the tree committee report by Jean, second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
We can kind of move on, because as you know, we do still have another agenda here. So water and sewer.
Right, and I did report the decision, and of course Jen had too, about how we were going to dispose of the request for refunds, and that was all between accepted. There is not much of note otherwise to report here, so I did like to read the report. If there are questions about it, I otherwise would accept the.
Any questions on motion to accept the report?
So moved.
Nag, second by Jean, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on, new business, approval to advertise for caretakers for 3 Mile Cherry Spring. Jean, make that motion, second by
Second.
Nag, all in favor?
Aye.
We can use probably Facebook, and if you see it on Facebook and you're on there, please just share, go to the village website, share it a couple times. We also will have it on Facebook website and probably Penny Saver, maybe the News Journal as well. So as you've seen, it exceeded our notice budget this year. So hopefully we can spread the word on that. Approve vending dates for 2022 Classic and Hall of Fame weekend.
I've been starting to get people calling regarding that and what used to happen before police.
All right, is there a motion for discussion?
Make a motion to approve pending dates on the Friday to Monday of Memorial Day weekend and the Friday to Monday of Hall of Fame weekend as special events for the purposes of vending and parking vehicles on private property.
Motion made by Cindy, second by Jean. Any discussion? All in favor?
So can I try another motion now?
Mhm.
I will make a motion to designate the summer of 2022 from the Tuesday after Memorial Day weekend to Labor Day, but excluding Hall of Fame weekend as a special event for the purposes of sidewalk vending in the business and commercial districts.
Second.
Second by Matt. So this is pretty much what we had done before. And again, all the rules sort of apply. You're the business owner or, you know, it's, you have the approval, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I should also say, and fees.
Wait,
And fees will be waived.
wait,
Because they're not waived during the.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
I'll maintain that second.
For your second, okay.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
And that should take care of yard sale day, I believe, because we just included it in a giant. So
Yeah, so you said that Tuesday after Memorial Day?
through Labor Day and excluding holiday,
What was the date that they were talking about for your sale?
June
June 4th.
Before we move on, may I just ask a question? We are signing, Jenna, this, or we are putting our name
No,
on this?
there's just the blue one that
The
I was
blue
aware
that's
of.
in your right
Yeah.
hand. So we have upcoming meetings, the swearing in of newly elected officials, our organizational meeting and budget hearing Monday, April 4th at 6:30. And then the next regular board of trustee meetings will be April 24th, 2022. So moving on to the second agenda. This is what I think you were referring to earlier, the contract amendment, double day field improvements, construction administration, and on-site observation. Mitch and I asked Delaware to, particularly Alex, who has been handling the project, the space of the project, to submit a proposal for part-time observation. And you can see on page 5 of 6 that it's 57,000 with a maximum figure of 10,000 for Saratoga Associates, who are the architects on the third base building, for a total contract of 67,000. The rationale for this is, yes, we had contracted with Lane for construction administration. That contract actually expired in July 2020, because that's when the project was being done. They were never really that involved in the third base. They actually stayed on for one additional year. And at this point, left in October or November. We were pretty much about to shut down the project for the winter months anyway. And now that we're reopening, they began about the second week of March, working on the third base bleacher or building. We recognize that, you know, if we do need someone to be processing all the contractor payments, making sure the certified payrolls are there, et cetera. So this is the proposal. We also had approved, if you recall, that we wanted to try and complete this project, which was to include the stadium seating, which was never part of this. So we are enlisting them to get us quotes for stadium seating. They have gotten us one, and there's like a state-approved contract list that we can, you know, be looking at, and so that's what we're looking at.
There's one thing that I would consider adding to this scope of work on page 3. So this talks about maintaining a red line set of contract drawings reflecting as built. Given the
magnitude of this project, I think it might make sense to actually have them do a set of as-built, not just red lines, but a final set of documents to reflect the as-built conditions, so we have that going forward in the future.
There would probably be an additional cost.
Oh, I'm
to
sure
that.
there would,
Yeah, so we would like an as-built.
Yeah, I mean, if they could give us a separate
Separate
proposal,
proposal.
just for providing that service, I think that's something we might want.
Yeah.
To have
Well,
access to.
it's interesting to me that shouldn't be the outcome, is they're taking their notes and annotating things as things go along, they're gonna wind up with a.
That's what the red line is.
Right, and so they're gonna, and they should be able to save all changes and give us
Yeah,
that.
I
don't
mean,
know.
using CAD, it's much easier than it used to be, but it's still typically, it's still considered.
It's a distinct
red line.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm surprised that we don't. Have those.
And there was one other thing when we were going over this, with Alex, we, on page 2, number 6, he had, it's almost like it had a little bit of a standard length comments here, prepare for and attend periodic, but not more frequently than up to once per month, and I said, no, because we're meeting every other week and, reaching out a lot more frequently, so he was fine with my redlining that, initialing it when I come to sign this, so that other change would be there. So we will, the as-bills and a separate price, that line crossed off. Is there a motion to approve this construction administration and on-site observation contract?
So moved.
For question, for part-time,
Yes,
Yes.
for the figures I mentioned, 57,000. It would be no more than 10, and really, we are quite complete there. We don't even know if we'd use that 10. So it's gonna be a maximum of 67. A maximum. So motion was made by Cindy, seconded by Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on, salt storage, services, principal. This is, a firm, which is actually, I think, turned out to be quite knowledgeable about the salt storage shed. Because we were actually thinking of a sort of a hardcover roof on this thing, and they pointed out that actually New York State DOT looks at these fabric covered ones because of a incident when there was actually a building collapse with the hardcover. They're easier to replace those covers, etc. We just want one that looks attractive, not unattractive, so.
I think, right, we had talked about what we wanted that site to be looking like down the road. This is an utterly utilitarian,
It is.
that it can be part of this.
Yeah,
no, this is it's a very basic.
yeah. But it will do what we need it to do.
Are there issues in terms of its sort of location and orientation, how you load and unload salt, that we want to make it so that, you're loading it from the back, you're taking it out from the front sort of thing, so we're constantly, I don't know what it takes to manage that, but it just.
I think they typically have a single entrance.
All right, so this is a professional services proposal. You can see the figures here on page, I guess it's not numbered, summary of costs. Design and planning, 4,500 to 5,500, bid and award services, 850, construction assistance up to 2,000, upset limit. cover level.
And entirely exclusive of the construction costs.
Correct.
Is there a motion to approve this?
I'll make a motion to approve principal for design and engineering of the salt shed for tasks 1, 2, and 3 at a total of up to 5,500 for task 1, 850 for task 2, and up to 2,000 for task 3.
Motion made by Cindy, seconded by Mac, all in favor?
Aye.
We have already discussed the carriage tour, and I guess she'll be submitting a permit application. review at that time. We have a pay app here for Doubleday from Trevisan in the amount of $22,230. I move that we pay that.
Second,
Second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
Application to use the village property, the ballroom on 521, the Cooperstown graduate program.
So moved.
is that a conflict with?
We've spoken to Janet, actually it works out quite well for us since we're using studies program to use a gallery space, and Janet was okay with the proposal because it's well past their closing time.
Well, a certificate of insurance, and that's all, right? That's all they need to provide.
Well, so New York State is self-insured, so it cannot provide a certificate of insurance, but will provide a certificate that explains the insurance procedure for the state of New York.
Okay. It's basically a certificate of stating its insurance coverage.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so motion to approve the use of the CGP for the ballroom on May 21st. By Hannah, second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
Cindy Fogg.
I'm abstaining.
Sorry. CGP graduation barbecue on 5/15 at 3 Mile Pavilion.
I just have one question. The notation, we'd like to have the bathroom unlocked, no water needed. You mean potable water, or do you want the bathrooms operating?
The bathroom doesn't have water. It's a compostable toilet.
Oh, it's a compost. Okay.
Stuff that's in there will be put, the benches and tables and everything will be out by then, right?
I'm sorry, what did you? I couldn't-
Usually it's not till Memorial Day.
That's why I wanted to make sure the trustees reviewed the request.
So Mitch will have to make work.
So we just have to, the tables and the benches would just have to go out 2 weeks early, essentially?
Yeah.
That's fine, I'm good.
Right.
I'll make a motion to approve the application.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
All right.
Oh, I just noticed that.
The beer and wine.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a graduation party, not a little beer and wine.
I concur.
I don't know, we've turned other people away.
When the park was open, that's why I noted that the park won't be open for swimming.
Right. So you have no problem, say we close on Labor Day, if people go up and party at Ferry Spring with beer and wine?
No, they have to have a.
They have
They'd have to have a permit, and you would be fine with that,
I
so,
think we've issued
We've
permits for
permitted,
that.
people have had like wedding,
Yeah, there's been a lot of.
Yeah.
if they do rent the pavilion, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
but they have to get approval.
Like, yeah.
Okay, all right, so it's approved.
Yeah, both of them are having wine. Did you see the first one? They want to have wine.
Oh, I'm sorry, I hadn't seen all the LoSAP stuff that you sort of, some of this that you'd have.
Oh, yeah, the LoSAP is from Jim Tallman, he dropped that off today. He said that there was an error, they had to pass a resolution on their end to allow $1,660 to be given to the person that had the error.
Okay,
May I ask a question about that? This is something that dates back to 2008. And I mean, I don't, typically there are limitations on making these kinds of corrections. I'm not particularly opposed to it. I just wonder what our legal authority is. Martin's
This is
already-
what LoSAP had advised the fire department to do. So I don't know.
They made it clear that there's the error.
Right.
I just raised a question, I don't have an objection.
So if the village board agrees this is an error, they should be corrected, then we'll make the adjustment. They're asking us to pass a resolution saying this error was made and they direct Penflex to make an adjustment to the record.
Right, and I see that,
And how they want it.
it's,
So this needs the village board to make a motion to direct Penflex to correct this oversight and error by issuing a one-time payment of $1,660 to Mr. King and to adjust his 2022 and future monthly payments accordingly by an additional $20 a month. It does sound like this change was made after Mr. King had further opportunity to review for and correct any errors, so it makes sense to me, and there's certainly funds in the account. So I make that motion. Is there a second? By Jean. Any discussion? All in favor?
I'm abstaining because my husband signed the request.
You can read that, right? All right. Do we get through approved map cover? Oh, is it on there?
I
So
couldn't,
the-
I couldn't print it, it wasn't
Yep,
printed
no.
for some reason, so I think everybody got the email, hopefully. and
Yeah,
able
did you all get the email?
yeah, my question about that image was, should we have the copyright symbol on
It was on there.
that? I couldn't make it out when I looked at
It
it.
said Sandlot bid at Doubleday Field, and then it had the R, the registered
Did
trademark.
it, okay, I tried.
At least that's what I saw.
I think they're getting rid of the recycling dumpster.
Yeah, they are.
Okay, great.
What were they thinking?
There's a
The
dumpster, dumpster in the picture, which is,
And a
Yeah,
propane tank too.
It does have the registered trademarks. and-
It's along the right side vertically.
Okay, good. I
Yeah.
just couldn't make it
I
out.
wonder if they can get rid of the propane.
Yeah.
yeah,
You know,
I
it's
didn't
her
even notice that.
picture. That propane tank is not even there.
Yeah.
Hasn't been in like a year and a half. Yeah, so, but that's up to her.
Okay.
So it was everyone comfortable with this is what we approved, that for our marketing purpose, they'd have to get it back to us for approval. And we did allow them to do it at no cost, but we did need to see it. So is everyone happy with the image and the marking? All right?
Yep.
Okay, we're fine. We can let, you can let Tara know that.
That she will have.
Yeah, thank you.
Will we have the parking app info in that brochure?
We are not paying for advertising in this brochure.
Right, I'm just talking about bartering. They get our image for free and they put a pay app thing in there. I mean,
Yeah, could they put a QR code in that would bring them to the app download?
Maybe. I will ask on Wednesday.
Yeah, because it's just
that
like,
seems fair.
even if it's just even a little down the corner, quick scan with your phone to park, pain-free parking.
I know they need to get it printed right away,
Yeah, I
and
was
I'm
gonna
not
say.
sure if we have the QR code yet.
Yeah, the passport might be able to provide it. This year, I think, it's the whole reason we're keeping the pay and display, et cetera. There'll be,
Yeah.
we'll smooth
Maybe.
this in. Next year,
Next
it'll
time.
be much quicker off the starting block.
Great.
Yeah, and I think something like a lot of the places that I've gone is just at the pay stations, they have.
And that's where you're gonna
And
see
that,
it
right,
most.
that's the most useful place for it.
All right, if there's nothing else, I'm gonna put it in the agenda. Thank you.
Jenna, I signed the blue sheet.
Oh, did you pass